Hey YouTube, we are headed to Watermellon Park and Campground, and if you want to skip right to the campground, it's at 20 seconds. This would be a very short amount of driving. Anyway, I wanted to share with you how narrow the roads were getting down there. I couldn't imagine trying to drive like a large Class AA down these roads to get there, but I don't want this to be a complaint video. I'm just pointing out if you want to look. So to the right, that's the campground store. Right past it is the tubing area, and then to the left is the campground. So we're gonna go into the campground and let you see what the campground looks like. And I will do a detailed, thorough review so you can see like the different sites and stuff. So you enter here. This open area I discovered is basically the parking lot that goes to the tubing area. If you just come up here like for the weekend or whatever to go tubing and you're not camping, this big kind of grassy area around us is where you park. And then the river on our right would be what you have access to if you just want to go over there and I guess play in the water or whatever. And to the right hand side is like non-power campsites. And then this area in the center is actually parking, it seems like. Because that like the tubing is super popular, and we were here on kind of like an off weekend, and it still was pretty popular. The dump station is right there next to where you saw that little building, the restrooms, and it was super awkward. It was like on this like weird U-turn. So we have the very last campsite here, right next to that building. So we thought it would be good to kind of have like an insight, but we kind of got a little bit confused. So normally you pull in here and you can see my power's on the left, and I'm like, why is there a picnic, thing, like right? Why do I need to move these picnic tables around? Is kind of what I was like confused with. So then I pull in, and if you're really seasoned, you can already see what's wrong. So that's my power on the left, and normally the power's on that same side, and normally I would be opening up, kind of facing a green space. But I'm opening up to a building. So basically what we decided was, this is kind of dumb. Let's turn around and let's like open up the other way. Well, guess what? That means the picnic table was actually in the right spot. So little new me, even though we picked an in spot thinking that we could, like open up to a green space, in the end we're going to be opening up to basically our neighbors. But we didn't have any neighbors because it was raining on Saturday, so I think a lot of people canceled. And the main thing that we were trying to figure out was if that power pole all the way on the right would go all the way like diagonal to where Kimberly is standing, because that's like kind of the area in which where the power plugs in at. So it's kind of weird. And so we ended up using an extension cord and a water extension. And they don't have sewer here. They have a dump station, but there's no like full hookups at all. So I'm gonna basically nestle myself on this left-hand side so I can open up to the right. Now the other oddity is you see how there's a camper in front of me on the right that looks almost like double park because there's no road there. Yeah, that's the C. So I'm in the B row. The A row was on the other side of the road that I drove through, and the C row is that row on the end that looks kind of double parked. So people have to leave enough space so then somebody can get to that power pole in front of me, and they just have to drive, I guess, between the campers. So yeah, it's kind of a little bit awkward the way they have these sites set up, and I thought, well, maybe it's just these two sites, like maybe like these two sites are the two awkward ones, and hopefully I'm not too nitpicky. And so these people in front of me pulled in, and they had the same thing that they're trying to figure out, like how are they going to connect the power, and then there's a big giant hole there. So we went over and we were talking, and I guess what they decided to do was to just switch sites. So they went and talked to the campground. The campground was totally cool with it. So you can see once again, this is where we're at, and I'm happy that we opened up in this direction. And you can see there's a C row in the back. The B row is where all these trees are, and then the A row is on the right. And we are in the first site, so it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, going down from where we're basically at. So you're going to really kind of shortly see that basically they decide to move which will take place like real kind of quickly. But I want to show you something else, like once they move. So there you can see them over there checking out their site. And that little Jeep that you saw is the campground people that actually work at the campground. So they are very, very, it seems helpful. Like the campground people seem real overly helpful. So imagine if this whole campground was full. Like that's a parking area that he's in for the water park. I found out, like for you know, normally you can't drive through there if like they have all the cars there, like if the actual thing's open. So he's backing in to a site. Like that's not the normal way that like campers normally are oriented. Normally the truck is like on the roadside, you know, but in order for it to work with where the power pole is, they pretty much have to pull in that way. And if you look at where the trees are and where all these power poles are, I don't know if on the road if he could turn like sharp enough to actually like get into his site, like if the sites on the two sides of him were full and the ones on the other side were full, because you know the back is going to swing around and it might hit one of those power poles or one of the trees or something. So very kind of interesting campground, so to speak. And you know, I thought, well, maybe it's me and maybe it's him, maybe like we're the two like oddities. Well, you're gonna see shortly, like we're not the oddities at all. So here's another camper that's about to pull in, and you're gonna get to see that I think it's just sort of the norm that it's accepted at this campground that you know you pull through like that. And see, there's a turn that I would be concerned about with some of the different sites. That's the way that you set yourself up. Like the truck is on the long side, and I guess you just hope that there's nobody in front of you. Now, like I was saying, mostly what's in front of him is parking areas. So we're gonna go on a little walk now, by the way, now that you've kind of seen that. And with a walk, you're gonna get a chance to see kind of more closely like how everything is set up. So I think that all these power poles are kind of new. And like I said, it's power and water, and in ours it was 50 and 30 amp. I don't really know if they have certain ones that are maybe only 30 or only 50. And as you can see, we had a building like on the end of ours, and that's the entrance over there, entrance, exit, whatever. And the entrance goes all the way around, and then we're walking down the road to exit. And the A's are on our right, so we're like somewhere around like A5 or A6 now maybe. And the B's are on the left, and the C's are the ones that are way to the far end, that are kind of like the double parked ones that back up against a fence that is the main road that we drove down. And you can see the C's are over there. And I guess a hope is that like, you know, you can slide in between everybody to get over there. I mean, it's pretty generous amount of space between them. So this little building here is what they have on the map that says security, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody in it, but I could be wrong. And this is a really kind of weird dump station. So there, that little square thing on the ground is the dump station, and if you noticed, it's on a turn. I've never seen a dump station that was on like a U-turn. All the dump stations I've ever seen were like these straight, like super long, super straight spots. But that's me complaining a little bit still. To the left, what looked like a seasonal area, and it looked like they didn't really have a very super high standard, required like a HOA or anything on how clean your campers had to be. So there were some older campers that I saw over there, older than even the campers that we have at our seasonal site. This is an interesting looking play area, and for reference sakes, way out to the right is where my camper is. And then we're basically gonna walk straight to the creek at this point. And the road in front of me that we are walking to is a road that the entrance to the park is on. Now I did find this kind of weird. They have this section that has like all these porta potties, and it's fenced off, and it says like no trespassing, like it's not part of the park. So I don't know if like that's private property or something, or if that's like a different campground inside of a campground. Like I don't really understand that because it's kind of landlocked. But that whole area there, it's not part of the campground, and it kind of had like barbed wire, even though it looked like they had all campers and stuff in there. And there's another one of those little security buildings that, like I was saying, that just, it sort of seems empty. And there were kind of random seasonal people, like that you could tell they were seasonal. That momentum there on the right, the toy hauler, because you could see that they had really high grass in the center of the camper where you couldn't like get the lawnmower out from underneath it. But you know, the rest of it was immaculately done. And like I was saying, so these ones on the left that look like they're, you know, fifth wheels and stuff, and full-size campers, they all had generators. I saw that like when some of the people actually showed up, they had interesting setups with generators where they had like a generator on wheels and stuff, but they run on generators because they don't have like electricity or water or anything like that, from what I can tell in this area. That little building there was a building that we drove past. That would be the entrance to the campground. And this is a creek, and I'm walking directly through some sites that were not occupied. So I don't think normally they would want you like walking where I'm walking at. But there probably is a spot down a ways where you could walk down to this area. And this is the river that you have access to. So if you do the tubing with them, they take you up the road and then you tube down this river, and it goes from right to left if you can't tell which way the water's flowing. And then you get out of the tube, kind of up there where those porta potties were in the distance, like it's way up there ways. That's where you get out of the tubes, and then you walk back over to the other building. And I'll do a separate video on just the tubing alone. But I wanted to kind of give a thorough, like kind of look at this campground so you could see what this campground looks like. Now, so for cell phone coverage, because that's like kind of important, we had terrible cell phone coverage at our site where we were sitting. Inside the camper, like pretty much nothing would work, and we had Verizon and AT&T. Outside the camper, the Verizon hotspot I think had like a bar or two, and the AT&T, it said LTE on it, but it didn't feel like LTE. I don't think I could work from this campground, at least not from the site that I was in. But we're right next to that big kind of weird looking building. Maybe that weird looking building was blocking the signal or something. But even outside, like, it felt really slow. So we did go tubing because, you know, that's always kind of interesting. This is what the river looks like if you decide to go tubing. And we just tied the rope off on like a little hole that we saw. And this was just like our tube with us tubing. And then we'll do another video where you can actually see the whole tubing service they provide. So anyway, please like and subscribe, and we will see you guys on the next trip.